This is grade 5, domain 1, lesson 14, showing, not telling emotions. Our objectives for today is going to be showing, describing emotions, showing behavior rather than telling the reader. And we're also going to track the reader, the author's emotions. Some vocabulary we're going to do today are treacherous, which means dangerous. Curvature is a bend. Haven, safe place. Detected is observed, and detached is separated. So what is showing, not telling emotions? So was there ever a time that you had, that you knew someone was mad or surprised or embarrassed or excited, but they didn't say, I'm mad, I'm embarrassed, I'm surprised, I'm excited? I guarantee there's probably going to be many, many times in your life that you've had that experience. What told you that? Well, usually it's about their body language. Sometimes it's about what they've said. Sometimes it's how their face looks. It could be a couple different things. So, for example, if you've seen someone who's mad but they don't want to say it, maybe their face is furrowed, maybe they're slamming things down, maybe they're ignoring you. There's so many different ways of showing someone being mad without them saying, I'm mad. Same thing with being excited. If someone's excited, they're giddy, they're smiling, they're really all over the place. They're just wanting to move really further. All of those are ways of showing that someone's excited without them saying, I'm so excited. So it's really powerful to show and not tell these emotions. So what that means is when you're doing your personal narrative, share with us those emotions by describing what you were feeling in that moment. What were you doing? So, for example, if I was saying, Sally's birthday is next week. Okay, that's telling something. Sally waited patiently by the door for the guests to arrive. She'd waited all day for people to show up. As her best friend arrived, she quickly grabbed her gift and placed it on the table before hugging him. Those are ways of going further and describing those emotions, and you can tell by she grabbed the present. She gave her friend a hug. She's very excited and happy that this is taking place, and we just did that with a few extra words. So it's really important to do that. So showing is better than telling because it allows the reader to form a strong mental image of what is happening. Remember, it's super important to show because we want to create that image in our heads so it makes it more memorable. So we're going to actually read some more of A View of the Earth. We're going to reread a couple pages that we'd already read, and then we're going to finish out the story. And as we read this, we're going to look for those shows of emotions. Pull out my power tool, and now I've got the access panel with those 117 little bitty screws with their washers and glue, and I'm ready to get each one of them. And I pull the trigger on my power tool, and nothing happens. And I look, and I see that the battery is dead. And I turn my head to look at Bueno, who is in his spacesuit again, looking at me like, what else can happen today? And I said, Drew, the battery's dead in this thing. I'm going back to the airlock, and we're going to swap out the battery. And I'm going to recharge my oxygen tank. Because I was getting low on oxygen. I needed to get a refill. And he said, go. And I was going back over that shuttle, and I noticed two things. One was that treacherous path that I was so scaredy cat sissy pants about going over wasn't scary anymore. That in the course of those couple hours of fighting this problem, I'd gone up and down that thing about 20 times, and my fear had gone away because there was no time to be a scaredy cat. It was time to get the job done, and what we were doing was more important than me being worried, and it was actually kind of fun going across the little jungle gym back and forth over the shuttle. The other thing I noticed was that I could feel the warmth of the sun. We were about to come into a day pass, and the light in space when you're in the sunlight is the brightest, whitest, purest light I've ever experienced, and it brings with it warmth. I could feel that coming, and I actually started feeling optimistic. Sure enough, the rest of the spacewalk went well. We got all those screws out, a new power supply in, buttoned it up. They tried it, turned it on up from the ground. The power supply was working. The instrument had come back to life. And at the end of that spacewalk, after about 8 hours, I'm inside the airlock getting things ready for Bueno and me to come back inside. But my commander says, hey, Mass, you've got about 15 minutes after Bueno's gonna be ready to come in. Why don't you go outside of the airlock and enjoy the view? So I go outside and I take my tether and I clip it on a handrail and I let go and I just look. And the Earth, from our altitude at Hubble, we're 350 miles up. We can see the curvature, we can see the roundness of our home planet, and it's the most magnificent thing I've ever seen. It's like looking into heaven. It's paradise. Now, before I continue, you can kind of tell there's this the feeling of emotion, and he doesn't really say how he's outright feeling. He just says, I notice the roundness of the planet. I can tell how magnificent. It's like heaven. It's paradise. From just those words, we can tell that he's just happy and peaceful. And he didn't say, I'm happy and peaceful. He's just saying, this is just like a breathtaking view, basically. This is an example of showing versus telling by emotions. And I thought to myself, this is the view that I imagined in that movie theater all those years ago. As I looked at the Earth, I also noticed that I could turn my head, and I could see the moon and the stars in the Milky Way galaxy. I could see our universe, and I could turn back and I could see our beautiful planet. And that moment changed my relationship with the Earth. Because for me, the Earth had always been a kind of safe haven, where I could go to work or be in the home or take my kids to school. But I realized it really wasn't that. It really is its own spaceship. And I've always been a space traveler. All of us here today, even tonight, we're on the spaceship Earth amongst all of the chaos of the universe, whipping around the sun and around the Milky Way galaxy. A few days later, we got back. Our families come to meet us at the airfield, and I'm driving home to my house with my wife and my kids in the back seat. And she starts telling me about what was going on through that Sunday that I was spacewalking, and how she could tell, watching the NASA television channel, how sad I was. That she detected a sadness in my voice that she'd never heard from me, and it worried her. This is another example of that showing, not telling. She was able to determine his sadness based off of how his voice sounded. Maybe his movements were slower. You can tell how someone's feeling just by the way they look. So that's why, again, showing and creating that image in your head is very powerful. I wish that I would have known that when I was up there, because this loneliness that I felt, really, Carol was thinking about me the whole time. And we turned the corner to come back down our block, and I could see my neighbors were outside. They had decorated my house, and there were American flags everywhere. And my neighbor across the street was holding a pepperoni pizza and a 6-pack of beer, 2 things that unfortunately we still can't get in space. And I got out of the car, and they were all hugging me. I was still in my blue flight suit, and they were saying how happy they were to have me back and how great everything turned out. I realized, my friends, man, they were thinking about me the whole time. They were with me too. The next day we had our return ceremony. We made speeches. The engineers who had worked all these years with us, our trainers, the people who worked in the control center, they started telling me how they were running around like crazy while I was up there in my little nightmare all alone. How they got the solution from the Goddard Space Flight Center in Maryland, and how the team was working on that Sunday figured out what to do, and they checked it out and they radioed it up to us. I realized that at that time, when I was feeling so lonely, when I felt detached from everyone else, literally like I was away from the planet, that really I never was alone. That my family and friends and the people I worked with, the people that I loved and the people that cared about me, they were with me every step of the way. So the next part is just a little biography about the author. Michael Massimino was born in Franklin Square, New York on August 19, 1962. After attending Columbia University, where he earned a degree in industrial engineering, Massimino attended the Massachusetts Institute of Technology for graduate school, receiving a PhD in mechanical engineering in 1992. During his time at MIT, he applied to NASA to be an astronaut 4 different times until he was finally chosen as a candidate in 1996. Massimino has been on 2 space flights, logging a total of 571 hours and 47 minutes in space, including 30 hours and 40 minutes of spacewalking across 4 spacewalks. Both of his flights were launched to service the Hubble Space Telescope, including the final Hubble repair mission. So now that we've finished up talking about showing and telling and finished our story, today is your last day to finish up your surprise narratives. I wouldn't recommend starting a new one today, but if you really want to, you can. But I would say continue working on the ones you've been working on and then send them to your teacher when you are finished. And I will see everyone in our next video.